Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where it is you're listening. This is Dan Turchin, host of AI and the Future of Work, here today in this most peculiar of times, sharing thoughts on the pandemic and reintroducing you to one of my favorite leaders. It's April 19th, 2020, day 35 of our county's official shelter-in-place order. It's day 85 since the first case of COVID-19 was detected in California. 1,050 deaths have been reported in our state alone, and 29,398 positive cases have been reported. Nationally, 39,201 deaths have been attributed to COVID-19, or about a quarter of the world's 163,134 coronavirus-related deaths. Every life is precious. It's not just a large growing number. Every one of those lives is a son or daughter, father or mother, brother or sister, friend or colleague. There's just no way to comprehend the human toll. And there's no way to put into perspective what might happen or how the death toll may continue to rise. Yet reflecting on what we do know, and specifically developments over the past week, is cause for optimism. This week, our kids started distance learning, which restored just enough weekday structure to make us all realize quarantine life isn't permanent. And we love math and social studies almost as much as we love making slime. My wife, Julie, teaches high school and is preparing her students for remote AP testing in a few weeks, which is sure to be a unique exercise. Grocery store shelves aren't nearly as bare, and supply chains are recovering from the initial demand shock. The lines aren't as long, and that feeling of being a vigilante when I take a walk outside or buy eggs is gradually subsiding. Face masks are the new hoodie, a staple of life now that had a different meaning before. We're adapting, we're learning, we're doing what we always do, staying positive. Here's a cure for your funk. Listen to Reid Hoffman's Masters of Scale interview with Stacy Brown-Philpot, TaskRabbit CEO, hosted by Bob Safian. It should be required listening for everyone in the tech community looking for post-pandemic patterns that blend philanthropy and capitalism. It's about how a team came together to turn remote workers assembling furniture and doing household chores into a team of frontline delivery saviors, doing what the company calls tasks for good. I encourage you to listen. There's a link in the show notes. We've shifted from a time when we were scared for our lives and our physical health to a time when we were confused, to a time when we were lonely, to a time now when we're hopeful. In the spirit of hope about what comes next, I'm resharing an episode we originally recorded last August with my friend, mentor, and former colleague, Craig Pratt, about lessons for next-level leaders. In it, we discuss timeless lessons for stepping up when others are down. Craig shares what has worked for him since humble beginnings as a golf caddy. He's an amazing leader. Nobody can fully understand or appreciate what you're going through right now, or quite how you're feeling. Wherever you are emotionally, I hope this discussion with Craig provides a ray of light. Be strong. We're in this together.
The following audio discussion is episode 4 of Astound's podcast series, AI and the Future of Work. This episode, entitled Lessons for Leaders in the Era of AI, features host Dan Turchin, co-founder and chief product officer at Astound, and guest Craig Pratt, Vice President of Worldwide Sales Initiatives at ServiceNow.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI and the Future of Work. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, one of the co-founders of Astound, an AI platform for employee service. And I've been looking forward to recording this discussion for weeks. I'm joined by one of my friends, former colleagues, one of my role models, Craig Pratt, who can start by introducing himself, and then we'll get into discussion right away. Craig, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, Dan, it's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm honored and flattered that I would be in that category of a role model. But I've clearly enjoyed our relationship from the first time we met in the fall of 2011, which seems like light years ago. What do you want to know about me? Knocking on the door of 50, been in the high tech space for 25 years, been blessed beyond my wildest dreams. Forever grateful for everybody who's, pulled me up the ladder along the way. I got a great family, great wife, 3 kids, blue collar kid that grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and then spent the other half of his childhood in Detroit, Michigan, and in Sarasota, Florida, and then got my big break in high tech in 1994 at a company called CompuWare. That's a short story.
So Craig, we've been in the trenches together a lot, and I remember early memory when you and I first met. We were meeting some customers in Minneapolis, and the thing that stuck out to me is that you cared. You got a big heart, and you were always there thinking about what was best for the customer, and not just that, our key contacts at the customer. That was refreshing and unusual, and I learned a lot from that. Talk to us about your philosophy on leadership.
That's it. That feels like a 3-week conversation, but I'll try to distill it down to a minute or two. I think leadership is something that you practice every day, and some days you do it better than others. I think you're constantly trying to figure out what leadership means to you. But the short story of it is, and I still give credit to Zig Ziglar, right? Help people get what they want in life, and you'll probably get what you want in life. And I believe in that, and I have always believed in that. And so if you just start by helping others first, karma's got a great way of making its way back to you.
Yeah, well said. You and I are both big Zig Ziglar fans. So we spent some good years. Yeah, that's right. Unapologetically. So you and I both spent some good years at ServiceNow. And when you think about kind of the next generation of leaders, whether it's in high tech or other fields, what would you say are the 1 or 2 lessons that you pull out of a great ride that you've had at ServiceNow to teach young leaders?
Well, I think, feedback is the breakfast of champions, and, failures, only come from your courage to be in the arena, compete, and potentially make mistakes. So that's just a fact of life. And the more you embrace that, I think the further you will go, and you won't let your failures paralyze you. And I've seen people do that. I think we put a spotlight on leadership even more so in the last 8 to 10 years through social media, TED Talks. I've been a big reader of books for a long time. And so, I think the best way to, tune in your leadership to who you are is just to learn from others. And, the mistakes I would say I've made in my career was not being coachable enough soon enough in my career, because I believed it was just about performance and delivering the numbers. And we see that a lot in high tech, where you take a high performing sales rep, you really don't invest in their leadership skills, and then you ask them to lead a team. And, I had that opportunity in the early 2000s, and I like to tell everybody I'm in the Hall of Fame all by myself, and probably being the world's worst first time leader. But it was from that failure that allowed me to come back and hone my skills and get better at my second opportunity, my third opportunity, my fourth opportunity, and forward. I think the other lesson that I don't think I failed on was back to gratitude and being grateful. And every year I write a note to what will now be, I think, the 26th year I've been in this business, to the 26 people who've had the biggest impact on me and my career. And those are peers, those are customers, those are partners, those are bosses, those are people who, fired me, hired me, I've partnered with, founders of companies, and it's an eclectic group. And so I'm just a big believer in gratitude.
is there handwritten letters to these people each year?
Yeah, what I do is I have a stock form letter, kind of going through, what's evolved and my gratefulness to them. And then in each letter, I write a paragraph handwritten specifically to them.
It's amazing. When you think about how you've been a mentor to young leaders and people on your teams over the years, I know for both of us, it's kind of mark of the leader to be able to recognize growth areas in our teams. Tell me through an example of how you've taken someone maybe who's early in their career and helped them identify growth areas.
You cut out a little bit there, but I think I know the question. How did I help invest in others and help them see the opportunities for growth in their career, personally and professionally? And I think they go hand in hand, because I've always said you have to have a great personal life to have a great professional life, and vice versa. So I tend to ask people just how far they think they want to go in their career and what investments they want to make in themselves. And that'll dictate how much time I spend with them. And then I do something that we affectionately call as gym sessions, because you think about in our personal life, those who love to exercise and work out, they'll go pay a personal trainer a lot of money to create pain for them, right? Stretch some muscles they didn't know that they have. But in their professional life, they may not necessarily pay a trainer. So I'm willing to play that role for those who want to get in the gym. And I learn a lot through the process about myself and what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And hopefully, the person on the other end of that session and that relationship has stretched themselves as well. And then that really shows up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, when you get a call, you get a text, you get a email, right? You get, wine in the mail, whatever it is, just getting a great big thanks from them of how you helped them see something in themselves they didn't think they had.
Beautiful. Yeah. Like us, most of our listeners are in or around the world of high tech. Talk to us about how technology has inspired you or changed your life, or how you ended up in this racket.
I stumbled into this racket. I was in the golf business. I was an assistant golf pro in 1994 at a country club in Detroit, Michigan called Orchard Lake Country Club. And we just happened to have, some of the best executives around town who are members. And in that summer, in that year of playing with them, they all thought I should have a career outside of golf. And I'm thankful that they saw that opportunity for me. And so I had the fortunate circumstance of landing in high tech in 1994 at a company called CompuWare. And so I went into the ADR program that you were supposed to be in for rough and tough 2 years, and knock on wood, state school kid, got out in 9 months, and they shipped me to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I went to a territory where 2 reps in a 12-month period said there was no money. And for the next 3 years, I was fortunate enough to be in the top 10 of the reps worldwide. And I affectionately call the first house that I ever built the house that Filey built. And I saw the impact of technology from a mainframe development perspective and the productivity tools that we delivered to the end users. And now when you fast forward that to today, Dan, 25 years later, and you look at iOS apps, you look at travel apps, you look at Waze, you look at Yelp, you look at Uber, technology is at every intersection of our personal life and our professional life. And I think it's created greater experiences. I think it's solved business issues. It's solved social issues. Medicine's a big benefactor of it. You can move money around the world a lot faster. I personally just finally got my Venmo account because my 15-year-old told me, Dad, I had to get with the times. So, I think technology is a great gift. And then you can even rewind that all the way back to, the early automotive days with Henry Ford and the Model T and the Model A. So big fan of technology and what it can do for humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. So we both have kids, and we would both say that we probably learn more from them than we could possibly teach them. With regard to technology, do you feel like it isolates us from kind of the next generation, or does it bring us together?
I always look for the good in everything, or at least I try to. There's some days I find myself maybe not doing that, and then I wake myself up again. But I look for the good, and I look for, the connectivity you see in LinkedIn. I see the connectivity you see in Facebook celebrating, people's good times, and then, being there to encourage them in tough times. I see things like GoFundMe, being able to make a contribution to people that you don't know, who's had a rough go of things, and because you can make a $50 donation in 3 clicks. I see, consuming content more because I'm a big fan of knowledge is power. And, I tried, in a legacy world, tried to read a book a week from a physical perspective, but I find myself reading even more now because of the capabilities on an iPhone or a tablet. So I think it's done tremendous work. You look at apps like Life 360, if your kids have phones and you want to make sure that they're safe. I look at, you and I travel a lot, right? So just the beauty of the Delta app for me, is the plane on time? Where am I sitting? All that stuff, even to parking in Minneapolis now, where that application's just on your phone. You're not out, pulling coins out of your pocket, right? You're just plugging in your license plate and paying online. So I think family-wise, personal, professional, I think it brings us closer together personally.
I couldn't agree more. I love the GoFundMe example. That's such a good example of way for people to give back in a nice frictionless way that just wasn't possible in a world, before apps. You and I are both avid readers of books. I'm always curious to get take from my guest. Your favorite book and why?
I get that question quite a bit because people know I read a lot, and I'm not going to say what my favorite book is. What I will tell you is 3 that are at the top of my list, and for different reasons. The first one is a book that was given to me by a friend, Nick Hernandez, a guy who's mentored me, actually happens to share our same birthday. One of the 25 guys or 26 guys or gals I write a letter to. And he referenced a book called Tattoos on the Heart by Father Gregory Boyle. And Father Gregory Boyle was preaching in the Dolores Mission Church in the poorest parts of LA. And he's a Jesuit by training. And he helped create Homeboy Industries. And there's a great quote in Father Greg's book where he says, we work with the population that nobody desires to work with. At its principle of this place that we stand with them. And so that just speaks to me because it's easy to hang with your peer group. It's another thing to go out and work with those, who need it the most. And so if you get a chance to read that book, I think it'll change your life like it changed mine. My second, book on that list would be Bob Buford, Halftime. And
I want you to repeat the name of the first book. I want to make sure all the listeners hear it.
Yeah, Tattoos on the Heart by Father Gregory Boyle.
Okay, thanks.
The second book is Halftime by Bob Buford. And this is really a story about being in your career, about the halftime, 40 to 50 years old. And, you move from success to significance. And, Bob in this book explains his passion is to multiply all that God has given him and in the process, give it back. And, to whom much is given, much is expected. And there's some great life lessons in that book from Bob. And again, the name of that book is Halftime. And last but not least is a book that was given to me by my boss, Mr. Kevin Haverty, VP Worldwide Sales here at ServiceNow, is Quench Your Own Thirst. And that's a book by Jim Koch, who is the founder and brewer of Samuel Adams. And he took on what we would refer to as the beverage cartel, Anheuser-Busch, Miller Lite, Coors, etc. And he talks about business lessons learned over a beer or two and creating the American craft beer revolution and what it takes to do that as an entrepreneur. Pretty amazing book. Classic David and Goliath.
Good one from a good Bostonian, Mr. Haverty.
Absolutely.
Craig, good picks. Biggest mistake you've made in your life that you care to share with the listeners?
Man, I think it's like my iTunes playlist. I probably have 10,000 of them. But if I had to pick one out, that really stood out for me, I'll rewind it all the way back to to my high school years, right? but academically not probably applying myself to the extent that I could have. Now, I do have this belief, and it's only my belief, nobody else's, that the world's run by C students. But I do think academically I could have given more in if I would have had that level of discipline. And I think I have decent discipline. Would I had more discipline in my life and in my career than what I have today? And I'm not saying my life would have been better or worse, but that clearly feels like a missed opportunity, because that may have changed my trajectory from an academic perspective at different colleges and different choices of colleges. But I'll say I'm very happy with my life, and I'm happy that I get to make the mistakes that I get to make on a regular basis, and recover from them and rebound from them.
I love it. We got time for one more question. I wish we should do this all afternoon, but I want to know the advice that you give to a fresh-faced Craig Pratt right out of college.
It's something I've actually started doing myself. I coined this phrase called Next Level Leader. As you know, Dan, I have my own podcast now called Next Level Leader. And you talked earlier about what we learn from kids and hopefully what our kids learn from us. But I think young adults, and specifically those 13 to 18, tend to listen to other voices than their parents. And so that may be a coach, that may be a teacher, that may be a coworker, that may be a neighbor, you name it, right? Somebody they admire, they look up to, and it's not as close to them personally. And so what I try to coach young future leaders on, 13 to 30 is your network will influence your net worth. It's really that simple. So the more exposure you can get and learn from leaders about their life path, because it's never a straight path. It's a zig, it's a zag, it's a zig, it's a zag. Fred Luddy's a great example. Learn about their story, learn about their path, learn about their mistakes, learn about their highs, learn about their lows. And when you do that, you're going to hyper accelerate your personal development and your professional development, and doors will open for you that you didn't even know were potentially open. And I'm a great example of that. I was fired a couple of times in my youthful years that led me down a path and learned some lessons that, led me into the golf industry. And from that, my access into the tech industry came from that job at Orchard Lake Country Club. And if I wasn't there, I probably wouldn't be in high tech today. And that was all because I had developed a network. I had access, and they saw something in me that I maybe didn't see in myself, and, put me in a position that maybe I wasn't quite ready for, but they knew that nobody was going to outwork me.
I love it. Wisdom. So I'm going to have my kids start listening to Next Level Leaders. This is your chance to plug it. So where can our listeners find more of Pratt waxing philosophical?
Yeah, Next Level Leader. It's on iTunes. We've just completed our fourth episode. We'll probably record another 20 over the next 2.5 months. And we have a very eclectic group of what I call ordinary people doing extraordinary things. It's going to be presidents of college. It's going to be a singer who was in, Prince's Entourage back in the day. It'll be, CEO of a company. It'll be 3 young men who just rode on a bike in 5th grade who raised money for human trafficking. So I'm really excited about the diversity of our listeners, and then diversity of our guests on the podcast. So, we'd love to have everybody join in, rate us, give us your feedback. And if you have suggestions for future guests to come on and share their story, we'd love to hear it.
Good. All of our listeners strongly encourage you, get your dose of Pratt on the podcast. Craig, I'm always inspired talking to you. This has been great. We'll have to make this one in a series, but just excellent hanging out with you. Thanks for the chat.
Hey, Dan, thanks for the chat. And I hope to see you cutting through Minneapolis sooner than later.
You bet. The sooner the better. And that concludes another episode of AI and the Future of Work. Thanks again to special guest Craig Pratt. Thanks to all for joining.